Hello, friends. Welcome to my channel, Learn with Rushan. So, today we are going to discuss another important and interesting topic, which is related to DevOps, that is using JFrog Artifactory as a Nuget repository. So, let's first see what we are going to discuss today, right? So, we'll first take an introduction to our main topic, and then we'll find out what are the advantages of using JFrog Artifactory, types of repositories in JFrog, then Artifactory Pro trial and setup with Docker, JFrog repository creation, as well as finally set up JFrog Artifactory as a package source in Visual Studio. All right. So, what is it all about? JFrog Artifactory. Okay. So now we are very much familiar in our .NET projects that we access official NuGet gallery or NuGet.org, or in other words, the NuGet repository to access certain packages, artifacts required for our project. For example, if we are building a console application or a web application or even a Windows application, we do come across several package requirements for our development. For example, you are very much familiar with newtonsoft.json for using it as a package to do serialization and deserialization of uh, strings into JSON, right? Or rather, objects into JSON. Then, how about entity framework NuGet package, right? Then we have the automapper NuGet package. So, likewise, we have various NuGet packages that are being used in our day-to-day .NET projects. Now, here comes the new person, which is Artifactory. Now, what this Artifactory or what this JFrog Artifactory does is it will itself function as a local NuGet repository, right? In other words, it will function as a proxy for the actual remote NuGet repository. So, as you can see, uh, when we build a local when we build a .NET project, right? When we build a .NET project, right? We used to right click and click on build, okay? And then what the MS build of .NET does is it will try to do a NuGet restore to restore whatever the required packages from NuGet, okay? Uh, so instead of directly calling the NuGet repository or NuGet gallery via the MS Build tool, with the use of Artifactory, we actually call the Artifactory NuGet repository to restore the required NuGet packages. So as you can see in this diagram, assume that I am going to build my uh, .NET project in my local dev machine, or even I'm going to build my .NET project in a build server, right? In that case, when I'm going to build this project, instead of directly accessing the NuGet repository via the MS Build tool, I access the required NuGet packages via the Artifactory. So this Artifactory will act as a or as a function as a proxy repository for the actual NuGet repository, right? So that is what it is all about in JFrog Artifactory, right? So you may wonder what sort of advantage that it has when it comes to JFrog Artifactory. Why not using Nuget gallery directly to access the required artifactory or the packages? So the advantages are it will actually reduce connectivity issues significantly. For example, when we are building our project, assume for some reason we were unable to access the official Nuget gallery, right? Nuget.org. We are unable to access that particular Nuget gallery. Still, since now we are accessing the Nuget packages from the Artifactory itself, which is hosted in localhost or somewhere in our office intranet, right? Now we don't have to bother about whether the official Nuget gallery is available or not. We simply connect to the local Artifactory and get the required packages. That is one advantage. The second advantage is it will significantly increase the speed of the project builds or releases. How does it do that? Right? Now, since we are accessing the uh, local Artifactory for our package dependencies, uh, we don't come across the download speed issues that much. So the download speed issues will be reduced as we do not have to uh, connect and access the official NuGet gallery again and again. Instead, we are now accessing the local repository, local JFrog repository to access the required packages or download the required packages. And the other important thing is now JFrog Artifactory uses a caching feature. That is, for example, now let's say we are accessing JFrog Artifactory for the first time, right? And we have a requirement in our project to get the Newtons of JSON as a package dependency. Assume that JFrog Artifactory does not have Newtons of at this moment in its repository. So what it does is it will call the NuGet official gallery and download the NuGet package. And then it will cache that package within it. Okay. So then if we do another project build later on, right? And if that project requires Newtons of package, right? Now the Newtons of package will directly be served from JFrog Artifactory, right? In other words, since the Newtons of package was cached in the initial build, right? In the second build, JFrog Artifactory does not have to refer to the official NuGet gallery. Instead, it can simply serve the required Newtons of package directly within its repository to the build tool. So assume how much of uh, improvement in terms of project build and releases can be achieved via JFrog repository. It will actually speed up your project build or releases. Uh, Assume that you are doing it manually or even when you are doing it via a build pipeline, JFrog Artifactory can be integrated and speed up the build releases without worrying too much about the connectivity as well. Okay, right. Then what are the types of repositories in JFrog? Now, JFrog Artifactory is itself a repository, right? It is a proxy repository for the actual or official NuGet repository, right? So in JFrog also, it is required that we create a repository. When we do so, a JFrog Artifactory is divided into three subsections of the repository. Okay. Now, in other words, we have three types of repositories. That is local repository, remote repository, and virtual repository. So, what is local repository? Local repository is where we publish our own NuGet packages. Let's say we have a .NET project and we want to publish it as a NuGet package. In that case, we can publish our .NET project as a NuGet package into the JFrog local repository. Then what is remote repository? Remote repository is the proxy repository for the actual NuGet gallery. Okay, so this is the dedicated repository which keeps the artifacts or the packages of the uh, actual package provider such as NuGet. Okay, right. Then what is virtual repository? Okay, so virtual repository is an aggregation of both local and remote repository. So let's say a person wants to access this JFrog artifactory or the repository, he or she can simply refer to the virtual repository URL so that the person who access the virtual repository gets the ability to access the local and remote repositories through the virtual URL or through the virtual repository. That is the advantage of using the virtual repository. So virtual repository will simply aggregate the local and remote repositories and allow a person to access uh, both local and remote repositories through one single URL. Okay, right. Then, as the next step, how are we going to set up JFrog Artifactory? Now, I have mentioned this URL to access the jfrog.com site and towards Artifactory. Actually, there's a trial version that we all can try out. Okay, and we can simply register ourselves and get a trial version. So let me show you that part also, right? Okay, so you have to go to this jfrog.com artifactory and click on start a trial, and then there are two options actually you could that you could get a trial version. You can use this cloud option or else you can use self-hosted option. In the self-hosted option you will have to register yourself and then finally click try it now, right? So there are various options that you can use to set up JFrog Artifactory locally. One such option is via Docker. Okay, they actually have provided the Docker image URL. Once you fill this form and click on try it now, you will see the Docker image URL option as well. Okay, so I have mentioned that Docker image URL, which is releases dash docker.jfrog.io jfrog artifactory pro. So this is the Docker image that they have provided. Okay, or the Docker repository uh, image that they have provided. Right. So using this image, you can create yourself a Docker container and run it in a uh, environment which you can run a particular Docker container. So I have used Docker desktop as my environment to run the Docker container. Now, as you can see, my JFrog container is currently running. Okay. Now, if I go back to the command that you have to use, right, uh, you will have to configure two ports. I have configured 8081 and 8082. So this 8081 port is used to initialize the JFrog Artifactory, and then it will redirect the request to the 8082 hosted portal, which is the JFrog login or the JFrog administrative portal. 8081 is used for the initialization of the JFrog artifactory. And then JFrog is the name of my container. If you can see in Docker desktop, uh, this is the name of the container. You can give any name you want, right? And finally, this is the image URL in which a container is created on, right? Then we'll see how you can create a JFrog repository. Okay. Now, once you set up your uh, uh, information and register yourself for a free trial, okay, you will be able to access the Docker image URL, and then from it you could actually run this command and uh, execute or run a Docker container out of that image, right? So this is the container instance that is currently running in my Docker desktop environment. Okay, so since I have given the port number as 8081, let me access my JFrog Artifactory. Okay, as I said, the 8081 will redirect the request to 8082. Okay, so it will allow you to create an admin account initially. So I am actually logged in as admin. Okay, then let's first go to the repository section. So to access the repositories, you have to go to the administration menu, and there you have to select repositories, and then this is the repositories. So these are the three repositories I talked about: local, remote, virtual. Now you also can create or rather add repositories using this section. Okay, and when you are initially setting up JFrog, it will ask you to create a repository. It will actually create a repository for you, right? And also it will ask you the official package provider, right? Now JFrog supports multiple uh, package sources or package providers. One such package provider is Nuget, and apart from Nuget, it supports package providers such as npm and other main package providers. So it will uh, actually create a repository for you at the initial setup of your, or rather initial configuration of your JFrog repository, right? At the initial configuration of your JFrog portal, it will actually create a repository for you, right? And it will also allow you to select the required package provider as well. So in this case, I gave my uh, repository name as qtt nuget, So it has created three package repositories: Qtt Nuget local, Qtt Nuget remote, and Qtt Nuget. This is the virtual repository, which will allow us to access the local as well as remote repositories respectively. And my package provider is Nuget. Okay, right? Okay. Then what is the next step? How you are going to use JFrog Artifactory as a package source in Visual Studio. Okay. Now you have to go to the other menu, which is application, right? In application, you have to go to Artifactory and artifacts, right? Now, one important thing is, as an administrator, right, when creating a repository, you will have you are given the option to add users so that those users are allowed to access that repository. So whenever as an admin, when you are creating a repository, you are given the option to add the relevant users who have the access to these this repository. In other words, who has the ability to access this newly created repository. Okay, so as an admin you can actually configure the users or add users. Let me show that to you first. Okay, so these are your repositories, and under user management you can add users who has the ability to access your repository. Okay, then let's get back to the topic that we were discussing, that is how we are going to set up this package, uh, how we are going to set up JFrog Artifactory as a package source in Visual Studio. So the first step is go to this artifacts page and click on Qtt NuGet, and then click on set me up, and under set me up scroll down, you will find a place called Visual Studio Configuration. There you go, Visual Studio Configuration. And under that, you have to select this URL or copy this URL. Okay, this is the URL localhost 8081, which is what I gave as my JFrog Artifactory URL. Okay, so you have to copy this URL, right? And then I have created a simple console application in .NET Framework. You have to go to Tools menu, NuGet Package Manager settings. There you have to go to Package Sources, and as you can see, I have already added JFrog Artifactory as a package source, right? The way you do is you have to click on this plus mark, and it will allow you to add the relevant package source. You have to give a particular name and the package source URL. So since I already have it, I'm not going to edit again. So there you go, you have the package source with you. And then right click on the project and click on manage NuGet repository. Now you may see, instead of nuget.org being selected as the package source, you are given the option to select your JFrog Artifactory as the NuGet package source. So you can select Artifactory here, which means now your package dependencies are actually being downloaded via this package source, which is Artifactory. If you want, you can even shift to nuget.org, but you can use this proxy Artifactory and simply download NuGet packages, whatever required for this project. If a particular NuGet package is not available right now in your local Artifactory, it will simply call the nuget.org official gallery by itself and download the package and cache it. And so that in the next time when you build the project or download the project, the package will be served from the Artifactory or the local Artifactory itself. Right? So that is the advantage of using Artifactory as a proxy repository for an official package manager. Right? Okay. Then I have to show you another important section. Where do we have this nuget.org file? You have to do something like this. App data in File Explorer, app data, nuget and nuget.config. You will be uh, redirected to the nuget config file, right? And this artifactory is selected as the default package source now, default source of packages now, and you will have your nuget.org also as usual. All right, so that is the other important section that I wanted to show you. Right, so that's all about in this tutorial. I hope you uh, were able to learn something out of it. And if you found this tutorial useful, please like, share, and subscribe to Learn with Rushan. And please send your comments to learnwithrushan@gmail.com. You're most welcome so that we can improve ourselves. Thank you very much. Happy coding.